Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, erupted into chaos on 25th August 2025 as thousands of students, workers, and activists flooded the streets, furious at lawmakers' lavish perks and what they see as a corrupt and militarized government. Riot police clashed with demonstrators in some of the most intense street protests since 2019, when students rallied nationwide against controversial laws. With over 280 million people, Indonesia is the world's third largest democracy. But growing unrest is testing its political stability under President Prabowo Subianto, a former general whose government faces mounting criticism. At least 10,000 demonstrators converged on Jakarta's Parliament building, waving banners and chanting slogans. Riot police responded with water cannon and dozens of rounds of tear gas as protesters hurled rocks, bottles, and Molotov cocktails. Fires were set under a flyover near the heavily guarded Parliament compound, and traffic across central Jakarta ground to a halt. Authorities deployed more than 1,200 security personnel, including riot police units and tactical teams, to secure the building. The immediate spark was lawmakers' monthly housing allowance of $3,075, nearly 10 times the minimum wage in Jakarta, which is just $307. For ordinary Indonesians, many of whom earn less than $10 per day, this perk symbolized how out of touch the political elite has become. Activists say MPs already earn salaries and other benefits worth over $3,700, placing them in Indonesia's wealthiest 1%. In contrast, more than 26 million Indonesians live below the poverty line, and economic inequality continues to rise. Protesters accused lawmakers of protecting their own interests while cutting subsidies and public spending. A deeper source of anger is the military's growing role in civilian life. In March 2025, Parliament passed a law permitting active duty military personnel to hold civilian posts, reversing years of democratic reforms. Soon after, the government announced the formation of 100 new military battalions, with duties ranging from agriculture to animal husbandry. By July, plans were unveiled for the military to enter pharmaceutical manufacturing, raising fears of unchecked expansion into the civilian economy. Critics argue that these moves strengthen Prabowo's political base while weakening civilian institutions. The unrest is fueled by austerity measures under President Prabowo. In early 2025, his government announced cuts worth $2.5 billion to education, healthcare, and public works. These cuts came as Indonesia's GDP growth slowed to 4.5% in Q2 2025, below the government's 5.2% target, while inflation hovered at 3.2%, eroding household purchasing power. In provinces like Central Java and Sulawesi, thousands recently protested against sudden hikes in property taxes, demonstrations that turned violent in several towns. For many, Parliament's housing allowances were the last straw, symbolizing a government enriching elites while ordinary people bear the brunt of austerity. House Speaker Puan Maharani defended the allowances, saying they had been thoroughly considered and adjusted to Jakarta's soaring cost of living. But her comments did little to calm public anger. Indonesia ranks 110th out of 180 countries on Transparency International's 2024 Corruption Perceptions Index, with police and parliament consistently rated among the most distrusted institutions. A 2023 survey by Indicator Politik Indonesia found that 72% of Indonesians believe corruption is worsening, while over 60% distrust parliament. Some warn the protests could escalate if the government doubles down on repression. Indonesia has seen this cycle before, most notably in the 1998 Reformasi movement, when sustained protests forced an entrenched regime to collapse. Whether Prabowo's administration can weather the storm without major concessions remains uncertain. Indonesia now stands at a crossroads. Monday's protests were about more than allowances. They were about inequality, corruption, and the fear that democratic reforms won over 2 decades ago are being undone. With public anger rising, austerity biting, and the military expanding its reach, the pressure on Prabowo's government is only likely to grow. What happens in the coming weeks will determine whether these protests fade into the background or ignite a broader movement that reshapes Indonesia's future.